I remember a time early in my career when a series of decisions led me down a path of costly mistakes. With my first startup, I believed so fervently in an idea that I shut out every voice expressing doubt. Instead of listening with an open mind, I assumed criticism and attack. Financially, it took a toll. We invested heavily in features that had no real customer demand. Psychologically, it felt even worse. I was so certain in my direction that when cracks began to show, I found myself in a tailspin of denial. The more I resisted constructive feedback, the deeper I sank. Investors questioned my reasoning, colleagues drifted away, and I was left with an acute sense of isolation. The entire experience rattled my confidence, making me realize how tunnel vision can become a trap, especially when you fail to distinguish between helpful advice and mere negativity. Time I acknowledged my faults, the damage had been done, and I had lost considerable time and resources on something that should have pivoted much earlier. Regret is a powerful teacher. The regret of not listening sooner became my wake-up call. After that venture collapsed, I felt disillusioned and uncertain about my capacity to lead. I spent sleepless nights replaying every conversation, dissecting every piece of feedback, wondering where I had gone wrong. It wasn't simply that the idea was flawed, but that my approach to criticism was too defensive. While there certainly were unhelpful naysayers, some people had genuinely tried to steer me in the right direction. I had lumped them all together, labeling every critique as negativity. When everything finally unraveled, I realized that critique, when offered constructively, is actually an opportunity. It was one of the hardest lessons I ever learned. The breakthrough came when I decided to develop a better system to filter what was coming my way. I began to practice the art of pausing before responding to any input. In those reflective moments, I would ask myself whether the suggestion was grounded in facts, whether it came from someone with relevant experience, addressed a real problem. That short pause allowed me to separate the wheat from the chaff, so to speak. I discovered that even if the messenger lacked the best delivery, their point might still be valid. This simple shift in mindset opened up new avenues in life and ventures. All of you here today have ambitions, goals, and visions that matter deeply to you. I know that many of you have encountered moments where criticism felt like a personal attack, especially when it arrived at a vulnerable stage. Bound together by the universal experience of working toward meaningful targets while navigating a sea of opinions. Each of us has wrestled with doubts and with voices, both inside and outside our heads, telling us we can or shouldn't proceed. Yet in every audience, I've found extraordinary determination and creativity. It's important for us to harness these qualities while also learning to discern the nature of the feedback we receive. My hope is to present a new path that shows how powerful it can be to embrace truly constructive criticism and to let go of harmful negativity. This is not just about toughening up or ignoring your detractors. It's about learning to listen more thoughtfully, filter wisely, and leverage good advice to propel your ideas further than you ever imagined. By the end of our time together, you will have practical strategies to cultivate an environment where input is yet rigorously evaluated, ensuring you can keep building and iterating and moving forward without losing sight of your core mission. A pivotal juncture in an era of unprecedented technological and entrepreneurial possibilities, so the ability to filter, adopt, and apply constructive insights is a game changer. I invite you to consider how this applies to your own work and personal development. Let's journey together through the nuances of receiving, interpreting, and using feedback effectively. Confident the most critical step you can take right now is to distinguish what truly helps from what merely hinders. Now, I want to explore the heart of this topic by focusing on several crucial aspects. The nature of criticism, how to recognize when it is constructive, and ways to incorporate valuable lessons without losing momentum. Through these reflections, may we illuminate a path of mutual learning, resilience, ultimately success. I'd like to start by examining how a discovery process can help us recognize the value of constructive criticism and differentiate it from biggest negativity. In my own life, I've found that genuine curiosity is often the catalyst that sparks better discernment. Let's begin by considering the fundamental questions we should ask when someone challenges our ideas. Imagine someone posing a query like, have you ever considered the potential flaws in your model? This type of question aims to open a door, not slam it shut. It invites exploration and can reveal overlooked details. When we treat every critical point as a chance for discovery, we move one step closer to clarity and improved decision-making. This approach forms the basis of our next stage, exploration. Discovery, in its purest sense, starts with a willingness to question our assumptions. One real-world illustration comes to mind from my work at Space. Early on, we faced repeated rocket failures that forced us to examine each component and process meticulously. Instead of dismissing the concerns raised by engineers who challenged established procedures, we embraced those doubts and ran additional tests. While these criticisms were often pointed, they weren't intended to tear us down. Served to illuminate blind spots and drive us to optimize performance. It became evident that constructive criticism often arrives those who truly want the team to succeed. So I learned to ask, these individuals pointing out something I can test or verify? If so, it's likely worth listening to. In the context of entrepreneurial ventures, the process can be even more nuanced. Founders are often deeply attached to their visions, and any challenge feel like an attack on their identity. However, many such challenges are grounded in data, case studies, experiences from others who have walked a similar path. If we look at major product successes throughout history, like the smartphone revolution or electric vehicle renaissance, we see patterns where visionaries benefited critical questions that highlighted design flaws or user experience issues. Had they dismissed every critical viewpoint, these products might never have achieved mass adoption. The next question becomes, how do we systematically analyze whether incoming criticism is constructive? One practical solution is to develop a clear set of criteria for assessment. Are the criticisms specific, actionable, and grounded in evidence or expertise? Is the tone genuinely helpful? Is it laced with personal attacks and negativity that provide no real direction for improvement? By employing these filters, we can transform a chaotic onslaught of opinions into a structured set of data points. In doing so, we treat each critique like a potential clue leading us closer to an optimal solution rather than a distraction to be dismissed. Once we gather these insights, we can move forward into a deeper analysis, shapes our understanding of the difference between sabotage and support. The difference often resides in the ability to provide next steps or solutions rather than merely pointing out flaws. Constructive criticism aims to refine and sharpen, not tear down. Criticism may not be agreeable, but it is necessary, Winston Churchill once said, because it fulfills the same function as pain in the human body. His words remind us that even discomfort can guide us to address areas that require our attention, allow us to prevent more severe issues from emerging down the line. Concluding this first exploration, we see that discovery is about asking the right questions and approaching feedback with an open mind. The criticism opens can lead to better strategies, stronger designs, and more successful outcomes, provided we are receptive. It requires us to adopt a proactive stance, much like a scientist who welcomes every piece of evidence, good or bad, because each data point contributes to the bigger picture. By viewing constructive criticism as part of a discovery process, we transform from something a powerful tool for progress. Sometimes it's easy to feel overwhelmed by continuous exposure to different forms of criticism. It can come from social media, market analysts, peers, or even family members. If we view every critique through the lens of discovery, we position ourselves to glean insights that might otherwise remain hidden. In doing so, we ultimately become more resilient, adaptive, capable of steering our ventures toward a trajectory that aligns with both market realities and visionary objectives. Stepping further along this path, the next critical dimension to explore involves real human stories. While discovery focuses on the intellectual assessment, storytelling brings an emotional depth that truly resonates, reminding us that criticism isn't just about data. It's also deeply intertwined with personal experiences and relationships. Years ago, I found myself on a factory floor, deeply involved in the details of one of our new product lines. It was a tense environment because of looming deadlines and high financial stakes. My daily routine consisted of coordinating with engineers, responding to production issues, and trying to maintain investor confidence. One chilly morning, a veteran technician pulled me aside to share a story about a previous project he'd been a part of that had collapsed because no one was willing to speak up when they noticed a crucial design flaw. They feared repercussions and felt their input would be dismissed. He told me this so I would understand the importance of creating a culture where feedback, no matter how critical, was welcomed. Listening to his words, I could picture the sense of dread that team must have felt, knowing something was wrong yet feeling powerless to do anything about it. I envisioned the consequences of silence, project delays, wasted resources, and a hard blow tomorrow. The technician's story cast a spotlight on a harsh reality. If people believe their concerns won't be heard, they might stop offering them. This was more than a cautionary tale. It was a vital lesson about the hidden dangers of discouraging feedback or mixing all criticism together and calling it negativity. In the early days of Tesla, we encountered similar hurdles. Our ambition was to revolutionize transportation with electric vehicles that challenged the conventional norms of the automotive industry. The press was skeptical. Some employees, disheartened by the aggressive production timelines, felt the entire mission was too ambitious. Investors questioned whether an electric car company could ever be profitable. These doubts piled up and tested our resolve. The stories that made the biggest difference were those shared by team members who had witnessed incremental changes in battery technology over the years, or who had observed that early adopters were warming to the idea of electric vehicles faster than the mainstream believed. Their stories added color to what otherwise were just sets of data. It was in these narratives that we found not only warnings about potential pitfalls, but also glimmers of hope and solutions. Through each storytelling moment, we realized that some criticisms, although tough to swallow, Vital clues about consumer expectations and manufacturing inefficiencies. Others, fueled by cynicism, repeated the refrain that nothing revolutionary ever survives market pressures. We had to differentiate the cynics' defeatist tales from the constructive stories that called attention to fixable issues. Over time, our approach to internal communication evolved. We started town hall meetings where employees could share real-life accounts of what was working and what wasn't, ensuring that lessons learned were passed along in a form that resonated on both logical and emotional levels. At one such meeting, a young engineer spoke passionately about his experience with battery recalibration. He described how he had first failed to anticipate how temperature variations could affect charging times. Initially, he was embarrassed to bring up the mistake, fearing negative judgment. But when he did, the response was unexpectedly supportive. The team jumped in to brainstorm solutions and discovered an innovative way to manage battery temperature. That single story underscored an essential principle. Constructive criticism doesn't merely point out errors, galvanizes collaborative efforts towards solutions. Moments like these reveal a profound truth. Behind every piece of critical feedback is a human being with a set of experiences shaping that perspective. Listening to the story behind the criticism, you can better assess whether the feedback aims to tear you down or build you up. One of my colleagues once put it succinctly, if someone bothers to share a detailed account of how they struggled with a similar challenge, probably hoping you won't repeat the same mistake. That insight has guided us in shaping a culture where stories are seen as valuable learning tools, not as mere complaints. In the midst of these narratives, we uncover lessons that transcend data points and PowerPoint slides. The emotional spec draws us in and reminds us of the shared human journey. It builds empathy, underlines that constructive criticism is about preventing needless suffering and steering us toward more efficient paths. Meanwhile, negativity without substance lacks that human depth. It often stands on hollow ground, offering nothing but discouragement and gloom. Whenever we face a challenge, it helps to recall a story of someone who overcame a similar hurdle. When I think back to the early days of PayPal, I'm reminded that many times employees brought up concerns about security vulnerabilities in our payment system. Those were tense conversations. The personal accounts of users who had nearly lost money, if not certain security protocols, motivated us to improve. We recognized that every criticism anchored in a real story carried weight, showing us we're not just building technology, we were safeguarding people's trust. That trust, built through openness to feedback, becomes the foundation of strong and enduring ventures. It guides you to examine criticisms and see if they reflect genuine customer pains or unsubstantial doubts. As Steve Jobs once remarked, people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do. Stories of breakthroughs and missteps show us exactly how that crazy optimism can either drive innovation or crash against the rocks of reality. How well we integrate the right feedback at the right time. By recognizing there's always a deeper narrative, we can sort useful advice from fear-based negativity. These stories, shared in team meetings or over coffee, weave into the fabric of company culture. They make it personal, reminding us that failures and successes alike are lived experiences. To fully harness the power of constructive criticism, we must continue to encourage of these stories. We must remain open to the emotional truths they reveal, while also appreciating the broader context they bring. This openness sets the stage for more analytical approaches, which will help us quantify and interpret feedback in a way that drives sustained progress. When discussing criticism, facts and figures often sharpen our understanding. As organizations scale, they generate mountains of data, from user metrics to financial reports, that can illuminate patterns in the feedback they receive. For instance, if you see a recurring complaint about product functionality, there's likely a measurable trend underlying that complaint. If your customer service team logs an increasing number of queries about a particular feature, there's a statistical basis for reevaluating how that feature is designed or presented. The shift to an analytical viewpoint enables you to remove some of the emotional charge from criticism, turning it into actionable insights. Studies have consistently shown that teams that engage in structured feedback processes outperform those that do not. Research from Harvard Business School reveals that companies with strong feedback loops often show higher levels of employee engagement and customer satisfaction. When employees are empowered to give constructive criticism, productivity sees notable improvement. These findings highlight the idea that well-managed criticism can lead to tangible growth. It's not just about individual success. It becomes a data-driven strategy to refine processes and products, leading to better market performance. Market trends also play a key role. Take the rise of electric vehicles. Early skepticism about EVs was rooted in range anxiety, high battery costs, and limited charging infrastructure. Over time, as data emerged demonstrating improvements in battery capacity and the expansion of charging stations, the criticism shifted from "this is impossible" to "how can we make it better?" Constructive critics who anchor their concerns in data offered viable pathways for improvement, more efficient battery chemistries, public charging policies or software optimizations to help drivers locate charging stations. The negativity that said EVs will never work didn't incorporate new data and was stuck in outdated assumptions. Constructive criticism evolved with the evidence, fueling meaningful progress. In-depth research further underscores the importance of analyzing the credibility of the critic. Expertise matters. A piece of feedback from a domain expert typically carries more weight than a passing remark from someone with no background in the subject. This does not mean ignoring criticisms from non-experts. Sometimes outside perspective can spark innovative thinking, yet overall the success rate of implementing feedback improves when it's grounded in research, experience, or specialized knowledge. Therefore, assessing the source and the data backing their claims can be a powerful filter in distinguishing constructive insights from unproductive noise. Statistical evidence that teams embracing constructive criticism go through more iterations before finalizing a product, but these iterative cycles tend to be shorter in total. The reason is simple. Confronting problems early with the right feedback allows for rapid course corrections. This is far more efficient than discovering a massive issue near the end of a product development cycle. With data as your ally, you can measure the impact of each piece of criticism, track resolutions, and see between improvements of key performance indicators such as sales, user retention, or customer ratings. In practical application, analytical approach mandates a structured feedback system. This might involve designated channels for receiving suggestions such as online forums or periodic team reviews. Include standardized forms that require critics to specify the problem, the evidence, and their proposed solution. In a fast-paced environment, these procedures ensure that feedback doesn't vanish into the ether, but is instead logged, categorized, and evaluated against measurable criteria. The more systematically we manage feedback, the easier it becomes to implement relevant solutions that guide a project or product toward optimal performance. As we embrace a data-centric model, the future predictions become clearer. Organizations that learn to harness criticism effectively will likely adapt faster to emerging technologies, shifting consumer demands, and evolving market dynamics. Conversely, those that ignore or mishandle criticism risk stagnation. By 2030, the majority of startups that survive beyond their initial 5 years may share a common trait. They have well-established practices for evaluating, implementing, and following up on constructive criticism. In an age of rapid innovation, the capacity to integrate new insights swiftly through the difference between leading a market and losing to a savvier competitor. One relevant quote that captures this data-driven perspective comes from the statistician W. Edwards Deming. Without data, you're just another person with an opinion. His words remind us that harnessing facts transforms opinions, critical or otherwise, into valuable inputs for decision-making. Through data, clarify what needs improvement and can measure whether the chosen solutions are genuinely addressing the problems pointed out by critics. This approach reinforces the broader thesis that constructive criticism is not an obstacle but a critical element of progress, provided we have the right tools and mindset to analyze it thoroughly. Moving forward, it's crucial to note that data alone won't solve every challenge. Criticism is also a human endeavor, requiring engagement, empathy, and dialogue. That said, a structured, analytical mindset combined with robust channels for dialogue ensures that everyone's voice can be heard without devolving into chaos or negativity. As we deepen our understanding of feedback mechanisms, transition to more interactive strategies that allow us to refine our collective intelligence in real time. Let's consider how we can integrate more dynamic approaches, encouraging interaction and shared responsibility in evaluating criticism. I'd like you to imagine a moment of collective brainstorming. Team confronts a pressing issue and must decide which criticisms matter most and which can be temporarily set aside. Such an interactive environment ensures that no single individual bears the burden of decision-making alone. Instead, the group's diverse perspectives enrich the evaluation process. It's not just a theoretical concept. It's been tested in effect in many of my own companies, where group discussions can illuminate angles that a single leader might overlook. To set the stage, quick thought exercises. Suppose you have 10 pieces of critical feedback regarding a new product feature. You have limited time and resources to address them. How do you prioritize? Inviting team members to rank each piece of feedback on dimensions such as feasibility, potential impact, and alignment with long-term goals. You create a structured group discussion. People bring their expertise, and often a consensus emerges that forms the basis for action. Even if disagreements arise, the process of articulating different viewpoints fosters understanding. This method transforms criticism from a lonely burden into a collective effort, with the added benefit of increasing buy-in because everyone has participated in the decision. In many workshops, I've seen the power of interactive exercises where participants share experiences related to receiving critical feedback. Whether in small teams or large groups, these exercises encourage people to recall moments when a constructive critique changed their trajectory, or conversely, when dismissing feedback led to a missed opportunity. Hearing these stories breaks down defensive barriers. It humanizes the process, reminding everyone that we're all seeking solutions, not trying to undermine each other. The structure of group dialogue then turns that mutual understanding into practical steps. Another strong aspect of interactive approaches is experience sharing. Think about the last major challenge you faced. Did you find yourself seeking advice or silently trudging through the problem alone? When we facilitate open dialogue in a setting, we discover that multiple individuals may have tackled similar challenges in different contexts. Sharing those experiences can lead to immediate insights, short-circuiting the trial and error process. Criticism becomes a communal resource for improvement rather than an individual cross to bear. This dynamic is especially valuable for startups. Rapid iteration is crucial, and where a single wrong assumption can derail a fledgling enterprise. Interactivity doesn't stop at discussion, it moves into direct practice. For example, if the criticism revolves around improving communication skills within a team, role-playing exercises can be introduced. Team members critique each other's presentations, focusing on both strengths and areas for improvement. Although this might initially feel uncomfortable, it cultivates a culture of trust in which honest feedback is expected and respected. The friction of critique is reduced because everyone is both giving and receiving feedback in a constructive environment. Eventually, these interactive sessions culminate in a learning summary. Teams reflect on the feedback they have processed, identify the most valuable lessons, and then outline the next steps. Synergy generated by collaborative critique often leads to more robust solutions than if a single leader were making decisions in isolation. It instills a sense of co-ownership, ensuring that each person feels invested in the outcome. The approach transforms the very act of criticism from a negative event into a building block of group cohesion. When I've watched teams fully embrace this process, people become more engaged because they're no longer afraid of being judged harshly. They realize that pointing out flaws or issues is not only acceptable, but expected. Everyone appreciates that these critiques are part of a collective mission to excel. Coming together is a beginning, keeping together as workers' brother is a success at Henry Ford. The essence of interactive feedback channels resonates worth reminding us that unity in the face of criticism is not just about solidarity, but also about unlocking a team's collective genius. From here, transition to a systematic framework for problem solving. This framework capitalizes on everything we've discussed so far: discovery, storytelling, analytical rigor, and interactive collaboration. Closes the loop by translating constructive criticism into clear steps for action and measurable outcomes. After all, the greatest failure would be to gather all this valuable feedback only to let it collect dust on a shelf without tangible application. Critics view it as a challenge to be identified and resolved. It becomes a catalyst for innovation. It starts by naming the challenge. Clearly, maybe a product isn't meeting user expectations, or perhaps the team culture is stifling open dialogue. Clearly identifying the problem is vital because vague feedback leads to half-baked solutions. Drawing from earlier discussions on discovery and story, we use specific examples or narratives to articulate the issue's impact. This ensures that everyone is aligned on the real-world implications of ignoring the problem. Once we have crystallized the challenge, we conduct a root cause analysis. This is where analytical thinking shines. We sift through data, investigate patterns, and assess whether a particular complaint is symptomatic of a larger issue or a one-off anomaly. If data shows that 30% of customer service calls revolve around the same complaint, that's a strong indicator of a systemic flaw. On the other hand, if it's just one vocal critic repeating the same great events, we can weigh it differently. This stage ensures we do not waste resources chasing phantom problems. Next comes proposing solutions. Criticism is most potent when paired with potential remedies. In my work, we often encourage teams to accompany any complaint with at least one idea, however small, for improving the situation. This doesn't mean the idea will automatically be implemented, but shifts the mindset from passive to proactive. By generating multiple potential solutions, we broaden the scope for innovation. It also relieves the pressure on leaders, reminding everyone that progress is a shared responsibility. The action plan emerges from selecting the best of these solutions and assigning clear responsibilities, timelines, and success metrics. This is where constructive criticism becomes a blueprint for change. If we identify that employees need better communication tools, perhaps the action plan includes it's piloting a new collaboration software, regular check-ins, or providing communication training sessions. Each step is measurable with set milestones. This clarity drives accountability and momentum, ensuring that the constructive feedback doesn't vanish into endless discussions. Measuring success is the final piece. We need to define metrics that capture the essence of the improvement. In a production setting, the metric might be reduced error rates. In a customer-facing role, it could be shorter response times or higher satisfaction scores. In a creative endeavor, maybe it's about the quality of the output and fewer revisions. The context, success metrics validate whether the criticism and subsequent solutions have indeed led to meaningful progress. In the Tesla factory, for instance, once faced repeated quality control hiccups when scaling up production for a particular model, the criticism came from both within and outside of consumers complained about minor defects, and line workers pointed out inefficiencies in the assembly process. A dedicated cross-functional team identified the core problems, proposed streamlined workflows, and introduced new quality checks at each stage. We measured success through reduced rework times and, importantly, fewer consumer complaints. The results validated the approach that structured problem-solving grounded in constructive criticism can drive real-world improvements. On a broader scale, these success metrics can feed back into the organization's culture. People see that critique leads to tangible results, they become more willing to offer insights. This positive cycle elevates the collective intelligence, creating a self-sustaining ecosystem of improvement. At times, discovered breakthroughs in battery technology or software efficiency precisely because someone spoke up, identified a challenge, and proposed a bold solution. The synergy between a willingness to criticize effectively and a structured approach to solving problems forms a powerful engine for innovation. Looking at this process, one quote comes to mind from Thomas Edison, who famously said, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." His emphasis on iterative learning underscores the essence of constructive criticism. Each piece of genuine feedback tells us one more way not to proceed, nudging us closer to a more effective strategy. Embracing that perspective shifts the conversation around criticism from dread to anticipation. We learn to see each critique as another step in refining our journey, reinforcing the notion that nothing truly innovative can be accomplished without grappling head-on with all the ways it can fail. By weaving all these ideas together, from discovering issues to storytelling that humanizes them, from analyzing feedback with data to interacting collaboratively, and finally applying a systematic problem-solving framework, we build a solid foundation for embracing and acting upon constructive criticism. And we also insulate ourselves from the paralysis that can come from unhelpful negativity. If there's no data, no story, no realistic solution, and no willingness to collaborate, it's likely not the kind of feedback that will help. Instead, we stay open to voices, only seek progress, harnessing their insights to continuously adapt and improve. Through this entire exploration, rooted in experimental ventures and supported by broader research, we can see a clear trajectory. Criticism handled poorly can derail even the most promising innovations. Handled thoughtfully, it can accelerate progress and unify teams. This dynamic forms the backbone of a forward-looking perspective, one where challenge is an invitation to refine, learn, and achieve new heights. Looking beyond our current context, we stand at the intersection of massive technological leaps, global challenges that require innovative solutions. This moment calls for culture that doesn't shy away from pointing out flaws or potential disasters. Instead, we need to champion constructive voices willing to do the painstaking work of offering insights, data, and solutions. We need to continue to refine the filters that separate cynicism and negativity from genuine attempts to help. Our greatest breakthroughs, whether in space exploration, sustainable energy, or artificial intelligence, will hinge on this ability to harness criticism constructively. With that future in mind, we can start envisioning what lies ahead. Imagine a world where feedback loops are instant and integrated into every facet of our daily work. We can use advanced analytics to highlight anomalies before they become crises. We can cultivate communities that share stories of progress and pitfalls so others can learn in real time. That's the future many forward-thinking organizations are striving toward, require an even deeper commitment to transparency, collaboration, and constant iteration. On a personal level, each of us can serve as a catalyst change by embracing a mindset that doesn't fear criticism, but seeks to understand its underlying intentions, by encouraging open dialogue and reinforcing the value of informed feedback. We become part of a movement that pushes the boundaries of what's possible. Whether you're building a startup, leading a team in a global enterprise, or simply nurturing a personal passion project, your willingness to solicit and act upon constructive criticism will set you apart. The challenges in implementing this at scale are real. People often bring ego, insecurities, and prior negative experience to the table. Not every organization is immediately receptive to a feedback culture. It requires leadership that sets a clear example by acknowledging mistakes and celebrating improvements that come from candid critiques. The payoff, agility, innovation, and stronger bonds of trust is well worth the effort. When people witness that their voices matter and lead to meaningful changes, they invest more of themselves into the collective vision. At the end of the day, bridging the gap between helpful advice and harmful negativity is a skill that every leader and team must master. It takes time to refine these filters, to learn from mistakes, build a culture that welcomes tough questions. We might stumble along the way, as I did with my early startups, but such experiences fortify us. They teach us humility, resilience, a deeper appreciation for the collaborative genius of teams that harness criticism for growth. If we return to the story of my past failure, it becomes evident that my downfall was never about a bad idea. It was about my inability to welcome the critical voices that could help me pivot. These days, I welcome an environment where colleagues can debate strategy, question assumptions, and challenge me directly, all in the spirit of finding the best path forward. It's this mindset shift that has guided my later successes, reinforcing the principle that high-impact initiatives require diverse perspectives. If those perspectives clash at first. When I consider the vast landscape of innovation waiting to be explored, I'm reminded that no single individual holds all the answers. Creativity and problem-solving flourish in environments where ideas are tested, critiqued, and refined. This ongoing dialogue ensures that each new iteration is an improvement over the last. In that sense, constructive criticism isn't merely helpful, it's the rocket fuel for meaningful progress, propelling us beyond the gravitational pull of complacency and into the realms of possibility. Looking ahead, let me share a personal vision for how embracing constructive feedback can shape the future. As we push toward new frontiers, be it colonizing Mars or accelerating our shift to sustainable energy, we'll rely on teams across the globe. Their diverse skills, backgrounds, and perspectives will highlight every potential flaw. When harnessed effectively, these critiques will help us avoid catastrophic failures in space travel, ensure stable infrastructures for green energy, and refine artificial intelligence to serve humanity responsibly. By valuing and integrating constructive criticism, we create safety nets and innovation pipelines, moving steadily toward a future where the unimaginable becomes routine reality. Challenges remain abundant. There will be moments when negativity is loud and constructive voices are drowned out. Public opinion can be fickle, and markets can behave unpredictably, leading some critics to declare that new ventures are doomed to fail. These external pressures test our convictions and our filters. However, if we hold true to the processes we've explored, discovery, storytelling, analysis, interaction, problem-solving, we'll find the strength to separate fear-mongering from logical caution. The onus lies on us to continually refine how we interpret incoming signals, turning those signals into productive direction rather than succumb to doubt. What I want to challenge you to do is embrace this moment as a call to strengthen your own filters. Instead of resisting critical voices, practice assessing their credibility and relevance. Dare to invite feedback from team members, consumers, mentors, and even strangers who have traversed similar paths. Use data to measure the validity of their claims. Engage in dialogues that explore underlying narratives and emotional truths. Formulate systematic approaches to solve the problems they spotlight. Through these steps, transform every nugget of criticism into an opportunity for growth. Equally important, we must commit to supporting each other and maintaining this mindset. It's not always easy to keep your composure when someone points out a pain oversight or a design flaw that took months of labor. Emotions can run high. When we stand together, reminding ourselves that we share the same larger goal, it becomes easier to maintain perspective. Leaders who admit their own vulnerabilities pave the way for others to voice concerns freely. Peers who encourage one another to speak up without fear of ridicule or retaliation create an environment where no piece of constructive criticism goes unheard. It's through collective support that we cultivate a culture of constant improvement. Each team member and each stakeholder becomes an integral part of a living ecosystem committed to excellence. Encourage open door policies, regular feedback sessions, and peer-to-peer mentoring, ensuring that the best ideas and solutions emerge regardless of where they originate. This support system also eases the burden on any single individual, making the process less intimidating and more collaborative. The old notion of a solitary genius is replaced by a network of innovators who draw strength from each other's insights. Imagine the multiplying effect of this approach on broader society. When organizations model healthy feedback cultures, they inspire communities, schools, and families to do the same. Constructive criticism becomes a norm rather than an exception. Instead of clinging to rigid beliefs, people learn to progress and reframe failures as stepping stones. This sort of collective evolution can expedite brews across various sectors, from healthcare and education to infrastructure and governance, reflecting a world that thrives on continuous refinement and positive transformation. Through all of this, I want to offer you my personal commitment. I will continue championing a future in which thoughtful critiques guide us to bolder and better solutions. I will remain steadfast in my own ventures, inviting diverse perspectives and challenging assumptions, because I have seen firsthand how much of a difference that can make. I'll continue fostering environments where no question is too silly, no challenge too daunting, and no criticism too harsh to be considered, so long as it's rooted in a genuine desire to improve our common endeavors. With that promise, I hope to lead by example, showing that the leader who welcomes constructive criticism is not weaker for it, but infinitely stronger. Before we part ways, I'd like to leave you with an invitation to keep pushing boundaries. The road ahead is long and will inevitably face unforeseen obstacles that demand every ounce of creativity and grit. Yet every challenge is an opening for improvement. If we remain open to feedback, that delicate balance of intense determination and willing receptivity, There's no limit to what we can achieve. Synergy between ambition and honest reflection can turn seemingly impossible objectives into tangible results. In closing, remember that the path forward belongs to those who dare to ask themselves the hard questions. It belongs to those who welcome constructive critiques, not as signposts of failure, but as steady guides on the journey. As you reflect on your next move, whether launching a new product, leading a disruptive campaign, or forging a personal milestone, carry with you the awareness that every voice point out weakness might be a partner in your success. It's in that union of vision and critique that extraordinary transformations are born. Thank you for sharing this journey with today, and I look forward to witnessing the remarkable achievements that await when you wield feedback as the powerful instrument it truly is.